right, I have not used this yet, so if I mess it up, it is what it is. I'm going to move this around because I don't like how it's arranged. This is kind of how I roll. While I'm getting things set up, guys, our tech crew that's been out here working, y'all need to give them a round of applause because it has been really wonderful to have people like them helping us out. If you've never done this before, you won't know the difference, but these guys are absolutely brilliant. They've been so kind, and gosh, some really great hosts. So again, thank you guys for what you guys are doing. So I'm real big on talking about culture, man. It is, to me, one of the most important things that you could ever do inside of this world is that you create a culture that gives people the opportunities for them to become the best versions of themselves, okay? My favorite quote, well, one of my favorite quotes, I got a bunch of quotes that I love, is change the way you look at things and you things you look at change. You know, obviously, perspective matters inside of this space. One of our challenges, however, inside of that is that we end up, here's the thing, we have our own strengths, right, that power our abilities. What happens, though, is that we often will take our abilities and we'll adapt them to the way people expect us to live. I'm going to say that one more time. A lot of times we'll take our abilities and instead of living inside of our strengths, we adapt those abilities to the way people are expecting us to live. And that's how we kind of go on with the way that we do things. And we get into this like cliche rhetoric. And I'm just telling you, one of our challenges that we have as leaders is that we have to adjust the way that we're thinking about things and changing the way we're thinking about things. Profitability is really interesting to me once I got inside of the business world because everybody tends to go into profitability and they start getting into their spreadsheets and they start looking at the things that have nothing to do with people and everything to do with like the numbers, the black and white side of it. And yet I have found that everything that I've ever done inside of culture has actually led to the opportunity to find profitability. Once you enjoy and love what you do, you're going to contribute so much to your company. And so that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. So I want to share with you an example of kind of changing that way you think about things. So this is a straight line, right? That's what you say, right? Okay, perfect, good. Okay, so this is a straight line. This is how we want our businesses to look. If you ask any agent that you've ever gotten a chance to work with, I've gotten a chance to coach a ton of agents. It's been really brilliant. They all want their businesses to look like this, that straight line, that consistency, 2 deals a month, 3 deals a month, 20 deals a month, whatever it is, they just want that consistency inside of their world. Well, we as leaders, we step in and we say, okay, cool, well, I get this. I can help you understand how to take your conversion ratios, look at the market, and adjust everything you need to do to be able to get to that straight line. And then we take our intellectual prowess because we're really pretentious and we think we're awesome and people should listen to us talk. And we put in the second line, which is the line of the curve, right? It's the market curve. Inside of our market in Houston, Texas, this is our seasonality. It looks like the bell curves. In some of our tropical areas like Florida, it'll look a little bit different because of the way that the market seasonality works, because of the way people travel. This is what it looks like in Houston. So I can take everything that I told you to do here and put it onto this line right here, and I can adjust it. So if you are in the downside of the market, well then just do a little bit more. Leverage your time to get to the space that your activities are really going to help you to produce the results. And obviously when it's going on the upside of things, well then just stay consistent and do what you're doing, and you'll find the ability to straighten that curve and get to that straight line. Here's the challenge. Most of us stop here. And we go, cool, you got this, and we like slap them on the butt, send them out into the world, and like do a great job. We've got to do more than that though. So this is something that I talk about all the time, and I lay in this third line. This third line is the chaos of our own lives. This is the human element side of things. This is a line that I like to call capacity. See, I have a challenge with real estate leaders who get people excited about getting into this world of real estate, and they go, oh, the sky's the limit, man. You're going to enjoy this. It's going to be so good. The reality is that sky isn't the limit. And I'm here to tell you, I'll argue with you all day long, the sky is not the limit inside of real estate because we all have capacity. And we will beg, steal, and borrow from other areas of our lives to make sure that our businesses are becoming successful. So the sky is not the limit. You've got to be able to have a mental connection to what your capacity is. Once I have that mental capacity, I can then get back to this space and go back again to try and straighten out that curve. But the beautiful thing about it is once I start straightening out that curve, everything else changes. Because if I don't have the capacity, because I love my family and I want to spend all my time that I can with them, it doesn't matter if I got to that second deal this month because I got to my kid's soccer game. You see, we've got to be able to start changing the way we talk to our people, helping them to understand that inside of all of this, man, you can have life satisfaction doing this business and not just going crazy. And I love to talk about these things with my agents so that then they have this different understanding and this different scope about what their opportunities are inside of this world. And so for me, I want to talk about culture, and I want to get you guys into this mentality that like culture and your people is what produces the profitability inside of your businesses. Some of you in this room are like, okay, I already get this. I'm going to enjoy this because you're just going to hit me with some amens. Some of you are going to disagree with me, and that's great. I'll stick around and have conversations with anybody because I love having these conversations about this stuff. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. We look at our businesses, a lot of times we're taught that we got to look through this magnifying glass, and I want to get you to change and think more about looking inside of your business like a kaleidoscope, which is what this slide is supposed to look like. Because it's that kaleidoscope kind of mentality that there is this ever-changing, chaotic movement that we get to invest our lives in, and that chaotic movement is the people that have entrusted us to be their leader, right? And so we're going to look inside of this today. So I got a chance to run a little bit of this experiment when I was in 2017. I got to take over a struggling franchisee's brokerage inside of a prominent name brand. And it was really, for me, I didn't know what I was doing as far as becoming a guy that comes in and changes a brokerage. I had no idea. I had never gone into leadership inside of real estate. I was a good agent. I was a producing agent. Given the opportunity to go in and be a leader was like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I believe that people are the opportunity for change. And so I focused primarily almost 100% on culture. Now that's not to say that I didn't do, this stuff where you got to watch your numbers, right? I'm not an idiot. I've got to spend money, so I need to pay attention to the numbers, but nothing I did had anything to do with that regular things that we do when we take over a struggling business, right? We start doing this like Six Sigma stuff. We start looking at all these spreadsheets. We start doing all the things that we think we should in that cliche rhetoric that business world tells us to do. I kind of put all that to a side, and I just focused on doing one thing and one thing only, which was creating culture. Now, I was actually given the opportunity to do this because neither I nor the owner really had ever had the opportunity to do any of this. And so when I took over for that brokerage, there was probably 86 agents. It was just a nominal amount of agents. It had dropped down pretty low. Their profitability was just very low. It wasn't really there. They had no big teams. They had 11 people who were contributing to their full capacity of their company dollar. And the leadership was so, just disconnected and compartmentalized that like nobody really trusted each other. They didn't talk to each other. They were just like separate. And so when I came in and focused and got the opportunity to focus only on these things, it was really so beautiful because in 2.5 years, what we were able to do, we changed everything. The agent count grew by 358%. We were able to turn the profitability around by 200%. I had 48 agents that were contributing to the company dollar now at that point. Not only had our leadership become really cohesive, but I had them now going out into the world. They become national treasures for the brokerage, for the franchisee brand, because they were taking what they knew, what they learned, and they were taking it out into the world and going to these other franchisees and helping them help their position players become the best versions of themselves. And so it just became a really cool, cohesive thing. I believe that there's something magical about what I am sharing today. And my hope is that once you kind of pick up on a few of these things, that you can implement them immediately into your businesses and see some of these things change and hopefully obviously get your businesses to thrive. So looking at a culture that builds profitability. When I look at the idea of culture, it is absolutely always going to be an investment in people. But there is a topic that we have to bring up that I think is becoming a dead topic, unfortunately, and that is the topic of mission, vision, and values. I believe that we have become so lost in this space of creating a mission, vision, and values that means something. Most of us end up going into, business dictionaries and start kind of pulling out our mission, vision, and values. We don't ever really dig into it and understand what is it that just boils up inside of me that I'm trying to get to produce so that then my world can become the same as this business world and I can have that life satisfaction in it. A lot of times what we end up doing is we see these companies like Coca-Cola, Chick-fil-A, Apple, Google, HubSpot, and we see how amazing they are at creating these really awesome cultures. The challenge is what we end up doing is we go, okay, so they have this really cool way when somebody comes in, they're going to greet them really nicely. Let's take that element and we're just going to transplant it into our business. You walk into an Apple store and it's really clean and cool and they're always like so hip. Let's just take that element and just transplant it into our business. The issue with that is when you take those little elements and you put them into your business, it's never really going to work unless you have built a foundation for why they're there. These companies, they did the very first thing, which was the most important thing, and they established their mission, vision, and values. See, we think, I'll take those tactics and I'll just transplant them. But these companies didn't become these companies because the tactics made them. The tactics became the tactics because they followed the foundation of their mission, vision, and values. And so we've got the cart before the horse if we're not looking at and building our foundation inside of this idea of mission, vision, and values. So let's talk about mission. Mission, to me, is fuel for the daily. My mission statement should give me fuel for the daily, okay? When I look at mission and I look at that fuel, it's not really even for the everyday as much as it is for the hard days. See, our mission statement should be able to keep us connected, and they should be able to keep us motivated, especially when those emotional days happen. Well, I know that we don't like to talk about emotions a lot of time inside of business, and yet we usually show up at our worst when our emotions are at our worst. We need that mission statement that gives us that grind to help us to keep moving. When I look at this idea, okay, of this mission statement, one of the main things that you've got to be able to see is that if I am not giving my people something bigger to work towards, if I'm not giving them that fuel, they're going to become just disappointed, really, in working for our companies. They're going to become curious about other opportunities that they have, and our retention is going to bottom out. That's just true. If I am not inspiring people, they're going to leave me. Our retention probably has a line connected directly to this mission statement. Unfortunately, most of us have created mission statements that want to conquer these number one positions. I want to be the best this, or I want to be the number one that. Like, that is just uninspiring, and I hate it if your mission statement is that, and that stung a little bit. However, that's just true. If my mission statement is only ever to conquer something and to really think about arbitrarily conquer something, because that is such a subjective thing to become a number one in anything. Like a number one by whose standard, by whose data? It's just uninspiring. Our mission statement should always be creating this opportunity to captivate people. Our best days of our company and profitability comes on the other side of people who are passionate about working for us. Your mission statement is going to be the fuel that keeps them engaged into that space. Starbucks says this: to inspire and to nurture the human spirit, one person, one cup, and one neighborhood at a time. Now, they have this idea to be number one, right? That's in the back of their rhetoric. However, their public-facing version of who they are and how they train and keep their employees is absolutely by that. Think about all the initiatives that they've ever taken to make their employees feel like they're actually the number one motive for what they're doing. When I look at this next thing, so we got to get into this idea of vision, right? So vision is probably one of the more difficult elements for us to really captivate. And the reason being, I think about it in two spaces. So there's two things that really have stunted our ability to understand vision. The very first thing is we're in an instant gratification world. Everything is like instant gratification. There's nothing that we can't get at the drop of a hat. Second thing is we have strayed away from a storytelling culture. Now, I know that we all have this idea of storytelling, right, because it seems to be the thing on all social media, and yet, I'm going to be honest with you, we all actually really suck at storytelling. We have strayed away so far from having a storytelling culture, and that means using your voice to speak story into existence. And so when you look at the first thing I said, having that instant gratification, I think delayed gratification, right, the absence of that has created we don't have to think anymore. We don't have to contemplate anything. All of our answers can be at the click of a button. I can order something and have it immediately. So how in the world, if I have been trained to think instantaneous, will I ever be able to use my brain to wrap my head around what vision looks like for the future. You are training yourselves to stop thinking about the future. You're training yourselves to stop contemplating the challenges that you have in your world. We've got to be able to slow down and understand what it looks like to actually develop delayed gratification into our world. It changes everything. And so I think instant gratification has just it's just put us out of practice, if you will. Storytelling, really think about this, the idea of storytelling. I am taking my dreams and I am putting them into words. Storytelling is our thoughts becoming reality. If I am supposed to be in the practice of creating this opportunity for myself and I can picture it in my head, but I can't articulate it, well then how's it ever going to come true? See, we're out of practice in these spaces. We've got to be able to get back to this moment of being able to do these things, to delay gratification, to get into storytelling. I want to help you with this vision thing because when I teach this tends to be the hardest one this seems to be the one that people struggle with the most, okay? So if you're taking notes with me, you can do this or you can take a picture of it. I want you to write year 1, 3, 5, 10, 15, and 20 down one side. And the next column, I want you to put, what did I do? And the next column is going to be a question, how did it feel? And then you're going to find the third one is going to be a little bit different. It says, what did they gain? So let me break these questions down for you. The first one's pretty easy, right? What did I do? So if I go back and I look in year 1 at the best version of myself, what would I have been able to accomplish, right? So year 1, here I am, nailing it. What was I able to accomplish? Okay? The second question is a little bit different because we don't like to talk about feelings. I know I sure don't. I am struggling with that and going to therapy for it right now. But when you look at this idea of how did I feel, we have to open these doors and understand what it means to feel when I accomplish things. I have to be able to get my emotional attachment inside of the space for the things that I have done, the things that I've created should stir some sort of emotions. Now, here's the deal. You can't just write good. So I was able to accomplish blah, blah, blah. And how'd that make you feel? It made me feel good. That's not efficient. It's not sufficient. Better word. Here's the thing. If you do need a little bit of practice, just because, again, we're out of practice, write the word because after that. So I feel good because when I was able to do this, it showed that my business had worth. Well, that's a good feeling, okay? The last question is the one that most everybody struggles with, and it's actually my favorite question. It's my favorite part of the exercise to do, is to go through that idea of what did I gain. You see, this is the whole reason why we're doing anything that we're doing, is to really answer this question. What did they gain? So the people who were around me, what did they gain? My family, my friends, my community, the charities I love. When I became successful in the things that I was doing in my business, what were they able to gain from my success? In the first year, it might be really simple that I had a bunch of people working for me. They just got to have the same luxury of time that I did. And man, did that not make me feel like I was a leader that was able to give them back to their families. And so that idea of building that idea of what did they gain, you go to year 20 and you might go, well, I was able to retire and I'm done and I'm feeling really good about my life. And now here I am. When you are able to really stop and not just think about where's the direction of my company going in that idea of future, but what are all the people who are going to be around me gaining from my success, that changes the way we motivate ourselves to keep moving. I do this every time I ever start, there we go. Every time I start a new leg of a company that I'm working through, I do this. It's so important for me to just really stop, to slow down, and to build a foundation for what I'm doing, and to understand that if I have clarity on my mission, vision, and values, I now have all of the pieces that I need to move forward without having any hesitation for the filters that I need to become successful inside of that space. When I started the coaching leg of my business, this is my vision statement that popped out of my just wrestling with the idea of it. And it's to engineer a platform that disciples a better together mindset. This is absolutely what I want to do. That idea of disciple is so important to me. It's a really important word because when I look at what I'm doing, I hope that you grab this, pull it out, rip it off, go back, teach it, love it, and share it with the world who's around you. Because me just standing on a stage is pointless. Me giving you something that you can go and change the world with makes a massive difference for everything that we get to connect to. And so when I look at this, it's really important that we all come to this space to understand that when we think about vision, we're more than likely just out of practice. It's not that you're not good at creating vision, you're just out of practice. And we look at creating these mission statements, it's not that we're not bad at creating mission statements, it's just that we haven't really thought more about that. We haven't gone deep enough to understand what it is that drives me internally. Your company should be a direct reflection of who you are. And that picture should then be the things that people are attached to and they love and they want to be a part of. Using a dictionary to define your company sounds pretty ridiculous when you think about the fact that your passion is what brought that company into existence. So why would we stray from those things? So one of my favorite things to do in this is that if you want to light a fire under your butt, go ahead and write your age next to the year. So when you're doing that vision, because it changes things a little bit. When you think about 20 years and how old you're going to be, one of my favorite times ever, I was teaching this class and there was an 85-year-old woman sitting in the seat, and she goes, well, Randy, I'm going to be dead in 20 years. And I just simply looked at her and said, yeah, that's probably true. But your legacy won't be dead. So what are you going to do to make sure that what you're building right now is going to carry the legacy of who you are into the future? It changes everything when we begin to think about things just a little bit differently. This isn't rocket science. It's you taking who you are and putting inside of your company because that's what people love. Value. This right here is the thing that I start every single class with. So I'm going in a different order when I teach it on the stage. But when I teach a class, I start with values because it's the easiest entry point to help you understand why you're doing what you're doing. You see, people don't get to be with me unless they share my values. I want you to think about values kind of like a vehicle. You don't get to go with me unless you can get inside of my vehicle. It's like the old-timey movies. I say old-timey movies. You get into the train guy comes and he's punching tickets. The way somebody gets a ticket to your company is whether or not their stack, their list of values, is matching your list of values. And the beautiful thing is once those things match and they are connected, your retention will be off the charts. And the people who are around you will love to be around you and they'll love to work for you because they match your values. I can almost guarantee the thorn in your side in your company right now, because all of us have one, is probably the person who doesn't match your values, and you let it go anyways. The only way you can get inside of my world is that you match the values that I've set forth. Here's the second challenge with that. We go back to, again, this like business rhetoric, and we go, okay, so what are all the cool business terms that I want to have value? And yet, we are not in a business book in any of our businesses. We are in a relationship economy. And I think every single one of you would agree. We just listened to a whole panel of people talk about relationships. And so if we're in a relationship economy, why is a dictionary defining our value statement? Why isn't our value statement being defined by the things that make me enter into a relationship with you? Why can't I have the word love inside of my value statement? It may sound weird to be in your business, but by God, if it's something that is of value to you and it has to be inside of your space, then why wouldn't it? We've just lost this idea and this practice of being who we are. The thing that has created passion inside of you has obviously been birthed into this business that you are good at. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here in Vegas. You wouldn't have spent the money that you needed to spend to come here and be better at what you're doing. And if that is true, then why wouldn't we stop and we slow down a little bit and we get into this relationship talk instead of this business talk? See, I don't think our value statement should ever be like built by boardrooms or spreadsheets or any of the things that makes us feel as if we're smarter than everybody else in the room because our words are cool. I would much rather be the person that sounds and looks ridiculous, and yet everybody who's with me is with me and they'll be with me to the end because I've built something that's sustainable. Does this make sense? It's just different. Again, you change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. So let's talk about this idea of creating culture, because once we have this foundation built, right, we have this thing, we've got, okay, here's my mission, vision, and values. The reality is that we still have to create space for culture, and that has to be done on purpose. Culture is actually a cultivated thing. Now, that's something that we have to be very specific and very tenacious about making it happen. So here are the things that I look at when I'm looking at making culture or creating culture and having it put into place. The very first thing is you got to be able to brand it. See, it has to have an identity inside of your organization. If you think about some of these great companies that you love or that you have tried to emulate in the past, I guarantee you their brand is very evident as far as what their mission, vision, and values looks like. And so you've got to be able to brand it. So a lot of us, we've talked about marketing. We had some folks having some conversations about marketing. When you start marketing, you create an avatar, right? And for those of you who don't know, an avatar is going to be that kind of that idea that you build to answer the question who, what, when, and where for your product so that it can reach the masses at its most efficient level, right? So we create these marketing avatars. Why can't we take that same concept, pull it back into our business, and help our culture to become an identity so that now it has its own ability to run and to be something that people are just absolutely attracted to. And when we look at these other ones that we want to emulate their tactics, we now become the people that people want to emulate because we've given it its own identity. We've helped it to be able to thrive inside of that space. And so again, the very first thing that you got to do is to be able to brand it. Give your culture an identity. Make sure it's there. One of the things that I found is that if you give it a mantra, that helps out a lot to be able to have some sort of saying that wraps around your culture. So when I took over that brokerage, one of the things that I did, that better together mindset, was absolutely what I brought into that space. And so I branded everything better together. And so our leadership, our agents, our vendor partners, everyone knew that when you walked into our space, it just wasn't about being together. It was about being better together. You couldn't miss it. It was written on everything. I wanted people to make sure that when they were in my space, that they were full of the culture that I was creating because it was so obvious. So we've got to be able to brand it. We've got to make it obvious. Your behavior is the culture. Okay, this is something to really understand. Your behavior is the culture. It can't move without the leadership. And so when you are in your world and you're doing your thing and you are living your leadership role, your defined business role, however you do that, if it is contrary to your culture, you're living a fallacy and your world doesn't believe you and it will fall apart. Your behavior is absolutely what will be the premise for your culture. So you've got to be able to start acting like it. When you start acting like it, what's going to be really interesting is that your people will begin to emulate it. And if they begin to emulate it, then now you have this opportunity to begin to reward it. Once you begin to reward it, you really create a very cool opportunity to be able to make sure it's institutionalized, right? So when we get into this moment where we've branded our culture, we've given it an identity, we've started to be able to have it a mantra around it, we then have to start teaching it, right? We have to begin to start teaching this idea. Now, most of us do have a bit of a challenge inside of that teaching it space because when we look at culture, we haven't really been trained and we haven't really thought about it enough to be able to understand how we do teach it. And some of us are a little bit of hopeless romantics and we want people just to kind of grab our culture and understand what it is and like, oh, they just get it. They're only going to get it if you teach it, okay? And so I want to give you a couple of things. So there's a paper that I had when I was doing some research on a couple of things that I found. It's on this QR scanner, and it was an Australian company, and they had somebody come in and do a culture evaluation. Inside of this paper that I found some really cool kind of substructure definitions for certain types of culture. And I want to share those guys with you right now, but again, if you scan that, you can get the paper, and you'll have it right there in front of you. What did I do with that clicker? That's what I did. I'm a doofus. Clicker. So the very first thing that we're going to look at is the clan culture. So inside of the clan culture, leaders are considered mentors that concentrates on internal maintenance and flexibility, concern for people and sensitivity for customers, that emphasizes human relations and adopts flexible operation procedures focusing on internal relationships. Their core values include cooperation, consideration, agreement, fairness, and social equality. And it's a really friendly and sharing space. So that's kind of the idea behind a clan culture. The next one is going to be the hierarchical culture. So when you look at this, it focuses on the internal maintenance and strives for stability and control through clear task setting and enforcement of strict rules, tends to adopt a formal approach of relationships where the leaders are coordinators, organizers, and want people to toe the party line. It's a high value on economy, formality, rationality, order, and obedience. The next one is an adhocracy culture, and it concentrates on the external positioning of a high degree of flexibility and individuality that is supported by open systems that promote willingness to act, dynamic entrepreneurial and creative place to work, where people stick their necks out to take risks. Leaders are usually considered visionaries, innovative, and success is on the unique and original products, and it values creativity, risk, and autonomy. And then the last one is going to be your market culture. And the idea behind market culture is that it creates a clear, rational goals that are achieved through high productivity and economical operations, results-oriented and getting the job done. Remember, they value competitiveness, diligence, perfectionism, aggressiveness, and personal initiative. Leaders are inclined to be hard-driving producers, intent on outperforming competitors and being on the forefront of their field to take control. We can't really teach what we don't understand. And until we get to the space where we start becoming students of culture and what we want to create, it's going to be difficult for us to really establish it at a high level. And so, again, I'm going to encourage you guys, like at the end, I'll put the QR up again. There's a lot of resources that I have for you guys. But when you look at it, if you wanted to start with this idea of, okay, what do I teach and how do I teach it, you're more than likely going to find your culture in one of these spaces holistically, or you're going to take a couple pieces here and there from them. But the idea behind all of it is that it is going to be you as the leader teaching it, and you're going to teach it mostly with your actions. Coming back to that idea of institutionalization, when we create our culture, we've got to make sure that it senses this kind of Pavlovian experience, that like when we ring a bell, they need to be able to salivate. We need to be able to create it in a space that when people see me and they see me acting in culture, and then I see the emulation of that, I have to be able to reward it. So that then, again, when I ring that bell, will they continue to be and act and personify the culture that I have created? Does this make sense? And so we have to be able to then take our behavior that we want, and we have to put rewards on top of that. Now I want to talk about rewards because unfortunately we as leaders do have some challenges with the reward side of things. And so you have to be able to reward it. The very first thing is you got to be consistent, right? So here's the thing. When you are creating an award, consistency is absolutely the most important piece to the puzzle. If you're going to write a letter, you better have a shit ton of stationery. If you're going to give away a trinket, you better bulk order it. If you're going to do some sort of trip, you better put the money in the bank and be ready to take them on the trip. Often we sit there and we wait to do anything when we have this commitment to reward people. We wait and we pump our brakes a little bit because we don't know what to expect out of our people, and we don't want to put the risk in like, oh, I'm not going to spend all the money in this because, I mean, what if they don't actually perform? Get into the mentality that your people will perform for you if you set the pace for that performance. Your people will perform for you if you set that pace for their performance because they're going to love working for you, because you're aligned in their values, because you've created a mission statement that gives them fuel for every single day, that you've got this vision that they can see themselves underneath the umbrella of who you are for a really damn long time. And so we've got to get into the same space that when we reward with the expectation that they're going to get it, they're going to understand it, and they're going to move towards it. But consistency is key. When I was a kid, my mom had this boyfriend, and they were kind of on again, off again, right? There's this one time when my younger brother, it was his birthday, and so her boyfriend gave these really great gifts, right? He was always like, went over the top for birthdays. Well, Travis's birthday was on one of those on again moments. My birthday, unfortunately, being the middle child, seems that would happen, was on one of those off again moments. So we had all the festivities of the day, got to the end of the day, and I was just sitting there and I was like, crying, just bawling. I was just so sad. I was like, I had missed out on an opportunity to get a gift. It mattered to me that I missed out on an opportunity to get a gift. If we fail to be consistent in the way we reward our people, there's going to be this moment where they start to wonder, well, am I good enough because you missed an opportunity? Do they care about me because I missed an opportunity. Our rewards have to be consistent. They have to fall in line. The same way that little 8-year-old boy was bawling at the end of the party because he didn't get his gift. When your people are left out, they not may be crying in their cubicle, but I guarantee you, they feel the moment that you were inconsistent in rewarding the things that you wanted and the things that you expected. Okay? Second thing, you got to be methodical about rewarding. We miss this mark all the time. We are not methodical. And if it's okay, I'm going to pick on us as leaders. We often tend to pick the reward that's the easiest. Like, how many of y'all have actually gone like, oh, I reward people all the time, but yet you bulk order something out of a catalog. You don't actually think about the things that the people love, like, or do. You see, when I think about all of this stuff that we're doing inside of this, if I were looking at rewarding my world, I want to reward it based off of the expectations I have for them to live up to my culture, right? So if it's a fun culture, it's a real happy, it's a go get it, that kind of thing, my reward should then follow suit. I should be methodical in helping my reward follow suit for the expectations of the behaviors that I want to see. If my culture is going to be a little bit more, a little bit more formal, a little bit more into that kind of market culture idea, well, I think it would be fine to reward things based off of performance and things like that. But if I'm going to be in that reward space, don't just do what is easiest. Don't just get a bunch of gift cards or a pizza party. You will look foolish when you show up without putting thought into the way you reward your people. You will look foolish if you don't put thought into the way you reward your people. I find that one of the easiest things is when you pay attention to people, their positive responses will usually come from when I've slowed down and I've taken the time to understand them a little bit or to show them some care. The beautiful thing about it is it doesn't have to be over the top, but your reward has to be methodical. I'm going to leave you with this last thought. So here's the deal. We are all human, okay? So you're going to mess some things up. And then people are going to get hurt. And then people are going to get in a tizzy, if you will. My call to you is to slow down long enough and listen to when people have complaints about your world. It's where culture usually breaks down. When people have a complaint about the world that you're creating, slow down to listen. Most of the time they're speaking from a fear somewhere. And you're looking at them as a person, but you're not actually talking to a person when there's this massive thing happening. You're not doing that. You're talking to an emotion that has somehow rooted itself out based off of fear. You see, we as leaders, a lot of times we think that we're better than, okay? And that's not a dig, but I guarantee you everybody in this room thinks we're better than when we have somebody who works for us comes in and they begin to complain about something that's happening inside of our world. Now, the truth is you probably are better than, because we spend a lot more time figuring people out. We read more books, we listen to more TED Talks, we watch more videos, we do everything we can to understand people. And so when somebody comes into our world, it probably is true that your understanding of where they're coming from is right. But if we don't slow down long enough to allow people to give their voice into their space, then we've just chalked them off and they're already going to leave you because they don't think you're with them. And so we've got to take a little bit of a back seat, right? We've got to slow down long enough to take a back seat when we hear these complaints, that we don't destroy our culture because we're going to pass it off as like, well, I know what the real underlying challenge is, or you never participate in the things that I'm creating in this endeavor. We've got to be in the seat of humility so that we can listen to the people and they can express themselves in their heart. Kids teach us things all the time, and I kind of jumped the gun a little bit because I don't understand this clicker, but this is my oldest son. So when you look at my world, I will tell you, as a father, I'm a bit of the guy who raises my voice to correct behavior. I just feel as if you speak louder, maybe people understand it better. And so this is Adam. Adam knows that I'm his dad. He knows that I love him. He knows that I would do anything in the world for them. He knows that I will 100% take care of him. There's nothing that this kid will not ever have. I love him to death. He's brilliant. Somebody gave him a book called The Energy Bus for kids. Y'all probably read The Energy Bus. They make one for kids. It's awesome. And so he's flipping through the book, and there's a page on bullies. And he was flipping through that page, and he looked at the bully section, and he goes, one day I'm raising my voice because like I've got to prove my point that like you should follow my rules, 6-year-old child, 30 9-year-old man. Like, it sounds about right. So I raised my voice to him, and he walks up, and the way a child can, and he just puts his hand on my face, and he says, "Dad, you're being a bully." You see, sometimes when we get into our world, we're wrong. Sometimes we're right. Oh, I had every right as the dad, as the proprietor of the rules of my home, as the keeper of all that is sacred in the rules, to raise my voice and let him know exactly what was going on. But it sucked to be the dad that a child called a bully. And so he and I, right then and there, we set the rules for engagement that would help me to become a better dad. And I allowed him the space to be heard. You see, in our world, again, there's sometimes we're wrong, and there's sometimes we're right, but our people, they don't need us to be right. They need us to be the people who will listen to them. They need us to be the leaders who will understand where they're coming from and give them their voice that they deserve. Thank you. Here's a word picture for you guys for all of this. There's a movie that I saw this picture, and it was, I didn't see this picture, but the idea of tulip fields. Have you all seen pictures of tulip fields? When we get to this part of creating these cultures, right, we want it to have this organic thing. You know, we want it to feel cool. We want it to no, Randy, it's just going to happen, man. It's just going to be good. That's just not true. You have to be able to put your practice into creating a culture. Even though these tulip farms, guys, they are highly cultivated, like they're monotonous. There are people who every day do the same thing over and over and over and over again to make sure that they're thriving. And yet look how beautiful they are. That's the same thing with the culture that you're creating inside of your world. Your business deserves you coming in, creating that beautiful moment with your mission, vision, values, establishing a culture that you are cultivating so that this is what your world looks like every single day. I believe that this room has the ability to do that. I believe that this room has the ability to change the ways that we do things so that when we go back into our spaces, our people love to be with us. And they won't leave us because what we've created, you never want to break up with. Profitability, for me, and in the world and the business that I have created, has only ever come at the other end of the people who have chosen to be with me. It's the people that matter the most. And so I want you to take this, and here's the deal. There's that QR scanner again. Like everything I do, like I just don't show up to talk, even though I do love to listen to myself talk. I do everything so that then like who you guys are, just take it, steal it, use it, bring it back into your worlds, because I would much rather you take this and make it your own than to have talked and then let these four walls be the echo that happened. That would be pointless. But for you to be able to grab this and move it into your space is awesome. I went way over my time and I didn't even realize it until I just looked at this clock. But y'all are brilliant. Thank you so much for listening to me. This is something I'm very passionate about. If I could help any one of you guys ever, please find me. I'm actually writing a book right now on all of this because it is that important to me. Which, by the way, hiring a book coach, if you've never done it and you want to write a book, do it. It's really freaking expensive, but it makes all of the difference in the world. So thank you guys so much for letting me come and be with you.